Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. It is almost the end of March, which means we're getting to the end of the first quarter, your first 12 weeks, however it is that you define your planning schedule. And I want to talk about what's gone wrong this year. If you're new here, I'm Rebecca Taylor, the best-selling author of domestic suspense novels and also a licensed psychologist. Today, I want to talk about productivity, planning, but very specifically about why and what to do when your best laid plans go completely wrong. One little note, I am eventually going to be talking at some point in the video about this book, which is Deep Work by Cal Newport. And basically sort of what just drove me to pick this book up and, dive into its pages, honestly, trying to find some answers for what was going on with me over these last 12 weeks. If you've been around here, you may remember that I did a whole video at the beginning of this year about how I was setting up, and I was really excited for kind of jumping into my first, 12-week planning session. That's the system that I use. It's called the 12-week year, and I'll link that video below if you want to at least take a look at what were my intentions, and then you can kind of see where I've completely gone off track. But let's talk about that a little bit. So. I think a lot of us, particularly writers, we can start off, we can have these sort of grand ideas or grand thinking about, what we want to get accomplished, whether it's, our next book, or if we're at the beginning of a year, how we'd like that whole year to look, changes we'd like to make, how we want to show up for both ourselves and our books this year. And, I'm no different than that. I will tell you, and I think I shared this in that last video, historically, I have struggled to write more than one book a year. Sometimes they even take me longer than a year. And that, I mean, even just the first draft. I don't know if I've ever completed the first draft of a book in a year. And so when I started off with the beginning of this year, it was really kind of with this thought that, I've restructured a lot of things in my life. I've stopped working as a school psychologist in the schools, and I've really kind of held that boundary with, job offers have come to me since I've quit, and I've been really good about, saying, no, that's not for me. I've shifted on to doing other things right now. So then, I was kind of thinking this was probably the biggest thing that was sort of preventing me from, diving headfirst into really kind of embracing writing as much as I can, as often as I can, and having that consistency that you really need to have to produce a lot of work in a shorter amount of time. So that was my plan for the beginning of this year. I was really excited for the beginning of 2012. I just released my most recent book in December, which is The Last Nanny. Lots of readers have been enjoying it. It's fast-paced. So if you enjoy reading domestic suspense, I hope that you will check out my book. I'll leave the link below. So anyway, I was fresh off publishing this new book, and I was already, I knew what I wanted to work on next. I was ready to jump in and get started. And I said in the video, I said, it's a very ambitious goal for me that I would like to complete the first draft of my new book by the end of this quarter. Spoiler alert, we're at the end of March. There is absolutely no way I am completing the first draft of that book by the end of March. It's planned out to be about 90,000 words, and I am currently, when I looked yesterday, I'm sitting at about 33,000 words. So obviously nowhere near finishing that book. First, I want to talk about what's gone well. Okay, so I will say the whole month of January, I was doing amazing. I was writing pretty much every day. I was hitting my word count target pretty consistently. And I believe it was that I needed to write, because I had sort of calculated in that I didn't want to write on the weekends. And so I believe I was needing to hit somewhere around 1,500 words a day. And I was doing that. When I got to the end of January, I was sitting at just shy of 30,000 words, so, a little bit behind, but really not that much. But, if at the end of January, I was at not quite 30,000 words. And now we're almost at the end of March and I'm at 33,000 words. What basically happened to the month of February and nearly all of March. Now, I will say I have recently gotten back into working on my book again. Um, but it was only after having to kind of really go through it in February and for a good chunk of March. So let's talk about where I made some really wrong turns. So the first thing I did, and and I knew even when I was doing it that it was a mistake, is I committed myself to an external obligation that had nothing whatsoever to do with me or my writing career, and it took up time. But not only did it take up time, it took up headspace. And I would say it was a commitment that was like sort of also adjacent to writing the publishing world and this kind of thing. And so, when I said yes to it, I said yes to it back in December. And it was really with this thought of like helping out a friend, which, can be like one of the trickiest things, right? Because I do think there is this like desire to sort of help other people. That is a desire that is very much ingrained in my personality, and it's one of the reasons I worked in mental health for as long as I did. Even far beyond the time when I should have been exiting that field because I was struggling with just like giving too much of myself away, year after year. So I have a hard time saying no to things, particularly when they are of service to others, or they're helping others, or they're taking something off of somebody else's plate to make their life easier. And even though taking it on is making my own life infinitely more difficult. And so anyway, I said yes to this thing. I'm not going to say what it is, but it was kind of described to me like, oh, it'll only be about 8 hours of work and blah, blah, blah. And, they kind of sold it as like, it'll be fun. And I would say that even when I was saying yes to it, I knew knew it would not be fun. I knew it was something that I didn't really want to do. It was like my knee jerk initial core reaction was like, you don't need to say yes to this. But, a couple hours went by and then I did end up saying yes because I rationalized it much the way they were kind of selling it to me was that, it won't take much. It's no big deal, this kind of thing. But it was, and I'll tell you the reason why is because, I still work. I work as a flight attendant, so it's not like I only write, and that takes up quite a bit of, physical time, but then also just kind of can make me physically exhausted. So that, the time that I do have carved out for me and for my writing, it's not, all day, every day, all week, type of thing. I still have to find time. But it was one of those sort of things where it's like it's work to be accomplished, and then, you know, you're always coming to it. It's never really completed. That's what this task was, and it's just sort of hanging out there all the time. It's like in the back of my head, it's like having this homework assignment all the time that you need to complete, but it never really gets finished. And so, but hey, just, work on it as much as you can. Which was just a really deadly combination for me, quite frankly, for all of February, is that I allowed this kind of, like, this is a part of somebody else's dream. This is somebody else's journey. And for some reason, because I said yes, I'm allowing it to hijack my brain, basically, and so instead of just thinking about, what are things that I should or could be doing with regards to my own career, I am now thinking about somebody else's business and how can I help further somebody else's business. And I'll tell you, it was definitely an opportunity that if it had come to me 15, 20 years ago, like, when I was in my 30s, it would have been different. Like, it would have been an opportunity for me at that time. But at this stage of the game, having just turned the age that I have turned, and we're going to talk about that next, it just was really something I had no business saying yes to. I felt like it's something that ultimately I should have known better and said no to begin with. And I can't, I mean, it's not their fault for asking me, right? It's like they think they're providing me an opportunity. I just needed to do a better job of identifying this is a test. This is a test from the universe. Like, you finally said no to working full time in, psychology, in this, sort of area that is requiring not just something of you, but sort of everything of you. And here you've turned around in less than a few months. And although in a much more minor way, you've said yes to something else that is basically requiring you to give away your time, your cognitive space or whatever to something and someone else that is not in alignment with what you want to be accomplishing in your own life. So I guess thank you, universe. Thank you for once again, you know, showing I am not immune yet from this lesson. I have not learned fully this lesson yet, and that, these things can come to you. I feel like I was kind of on guard for, the offers to jump back into school psychology that I kind of field on a fairly regular basis. And, I know how to say no to that very specific thing. But when it came to something, I guess kind of sneakily adjacent. I don't mean sneaky with regards to the people that offered me the job to do, but sneaky with regards to, I guess, the universe, my higher self, whatever you want to call it, sending me something that's like, this is kind of close. This is sort of next door to, your writing, your publishing life. Maybe there could be some kind of an opportunity in this, for you. And it was just wrongheaded thinking. And I honestly know I did not listen to my gut instinct at the time that told me, if it wasn't that I should have said no immediately, it's that I should have sat with it for several days before I committed to it. So we're also going to talk about that in a second. So let's circle back to this idea of, what else happened in February. And something pretty significant in my life, although I guess it kind of surprised me, and that's the fact that I turned 50 in February. That's right, 50, the big 50. And so I hadn't really been like thinking much about this. Like, I'm not the kind of person where birthdays typically kind of throw me for a loop. I don't, when I turned 30, it was just sort of like, I'm 30, and turned 40. It was like, okay, you're getting older, but like, it didn't bother me. Like, I don't feel like it's for me, aging doesn't feel like it's something to fight necessarily, or to be sad about. I guess I would like to try to age gracefully. If I could age like Helen Mirren, hello, I would love that, kind of thing. But I'm not out running around. Like, I guess I don't feel the need to try to not be 50. I am very happy with my life. I'm happy with what I've accomplished. I love my relationships. I love the person that I have become and that I continue to grow into all the time. And so I guess it was a little surprising to me that for some reason that number 50 seemed really big, and it got a little bit lodged in my throat. I guess we'll just kind of say that. And I don't know. It really, and I think where I didn't really, why I didn't really expect it is because like aging doesn't necessarily bother me, but I was kind of doing this sort of in the background all this time, this kind of life assessment, I suppose. And it's like, what have you done? What are you doing? And where are you going, kind of? And I just kind of got on this flywheel of like going around and around about this, which, when you're trying to write a book is incredibly distracting, and I think it's probably, doing this assessment of like my writing career, what have I done? Where am I trying to get to? And really just thinking very hard about, do you even want this? Because pursuing a writing career, it's a lot of work. And I suppose there's you know, there's definitely a part of me that's sort of like, why are you continuing to do all this work? And, I explained it. I was having an off the cuff conversation. It was with another flight attendant on the jump seat. And I was, we were talking about me writing and things like that. She had asked, oh, what are you going to do on your layover? And I was like, I usually spend the time, like if I have a long layover, I spend that time writing and working on whatever I'm in. And that brought up the conversation of writing books. And she's like, oh my gosh, that's so amazing, and what do you write and where are they and that kind of thing. And it prompted me to say, I didn't even think about it, but it prompted me to say, because I think we were laying over in Hawaii somewhere or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, but sometimes I just kind of can't help but think about how nice it would be if I didn't perpetually have these sort of writing assignments hanging over me all the time. And that I could just maybe sit and enjoy the beach, or the pool, or, going for a walk or a hike or whatever on my layovers without this constant back in the head assignment, this writing, all the time. And and maybe this is something like people who don't write don't realize, but like when you're working on a book, you're kind of always thinking about the book. It's hard, or at least I've never figured out how to stop thinking about the book or how to stop thinking about, when I'm not writing, I should be writing. Or if I'm doing something else, it's like, okay, I need to get this thing done, whether it's the laundry or, taking the dogs out or whatever it is. And then when am I going to be able to get to, doing the writing? It's just this thing, like, all the time you're thinking about, when am I gonna do it? How am I gonna do it? Where's it gonna fit in? And this kind of thing. And I try to structure it. I try to find, like, routines, this sort of thing, but it's still always just kind of floating there in the back of my head. So there's certainly a part of me that's like, you know, do you want to continue to do this basically to yourself? I mean, it's not like anybody is, forcing me to do this. Um, so I went through a lot of thinking and, journaling about this. And I will tell you right now, the answer is yes. I want to continue to do that. But, me coming to that yes answer isn't as easy as me explaining it to you right now. Like I spent a lot of journal pages, trying to figure that out and what that looked like. And I think I landed on this idea that, this might not always be the right path for you, but right now this is the path that you want to be on. And so, you know, you're going to keep doing it. You're going to finish this book, and then maybe after I finish this next book, which, it's my 11th book, I haven't revealed the title yet, so, but anyway, this next book, then you can kind of reevaluate and decide, okay, do you want to start that next book? Because I'll tell you one thing that's really hard for me is starting a book and not finishing it. So, every one is like a new commitment. It's like a new relationship. So, yes, I'm going to complete this new book, and then we're going to kind of reassess and see where we are. Because I will tell you, like, turning 50 has made me very reflective about, you know, what do I want to spend, if optimistically I'm halfway through my life, and maybe, statistically it's actually more than that. You're more than halfway through your life. How do you want to spend your time? Because my time is my most valuable resource right now. And so it's really valuable. And I think that that's where 50 hit me. 50 hit me with, how do you want to spend your time? How do you want to spend your life? Because, best case scenario, you have 40, 50 years left. And what's really, really valuable to you. So, to be continued with these deep thoughts and questions on life, kind of thing. So, to circle back to what I mentioned earlier about how well I was doing all of this, soul searching and thinking and, kind of completely getting knocked off track. At my heart, I am a studier. I'm a learner. And whenever I come across a problem, whether it's in life or professionally or whatever it is, I tend to turn to the work, the teachings of others to sort of see if there's like some insight. And, it's never that I just kind of take anything prescriptive and wholesale, swallow it whole, and then say, my life is fixed. But I appreciate things that, help me think more critically or delve a little deeper into a subject or a problem or, something. And so I came across Deep Work by Cal Newport. There's another book that's been pretty instrumental to me in the last 12 weeks, but I think I'm going to save that for another video. But very specifically, with Deep Work by Cal Newport, he's talking in there about like how we sort of as a people, as a modern people, have grown further and further away from our ability to do deep work. This work that, we can completely immerse ourselves in for long stretches of time, up to usually about 4 hours at a time, and give our entire full focus and attention to. And obviously that's, what is required when writing a book is being able to, fully focus. And I will say, not just myself, but I've heard many other writers kind of lament this decreasing ability to be able to focus our attention and our minds to delving into our work or our books. And, he posits lots of sort of like reasons for why this is. One of them is just kind of this, the way we've kind of become, not kind of, the way we are constantly connected. And so, if he's not specific, he's not talking specifically about writers, although he does mention some of them in his book. But, just in your modern work office, with this open concept plans and, the constant connectivity. So like people emailing constantly and the expectations that we have now to respond, if not immediately within the next, few hours. And if you've almost now, like if you've gone even 24 hours without responding to somebody, it's, I don't know, it's seen as rude or dismissive or whatever, which I don't know, kind of seems insane to me, I suppose. But that's certainly the case, and so basically like anytime we're trying to work on a project or get something done, there's just like this multitude of things that are constantly pulling us in every direction. And it's pulling us, it's causing us to constantly task shift, all day long. And so it makes it almost impossible to truly tune out all distraction and just, be fully present. In addition to that, because that is how modern life is now sort of living, we are losing our ability to kind of stave off this, desire to sort of be switching to something novel all the time in our brain and really dive deep and get the work done. So, there's a couple writers that I follow online, either on YouTube or, Instagram or whatever. And, you see it kind of play out in them. And partially I think in our career, it can be somewhat difficult because, in the last 10, 12 years, whatever it's been, there's been this push for, authors to do more things like this, like create videos, to create content, whether it's on Instagram or Facebook or something like this. And also the being connected to not just readers, but other authors and just sort of the world at large. And I think, if you're a writer who has, if you're a writer who's lucky enough to be able to write full time, sure, you don't have maybe the constant pull of like office workers walking by your open concept office all day long and, pulling your attention in a million different ways. But you certainly have, X, if you're logged onto it. You have Blue Sky, you have Threads now, you have Instagram, Facebook, as well as just if you're part of larger writer messaging groups, the constant ping, ping, ping. He talks about in this how it's not just that those things are happening, but how our brain kind of craves it. It's like this easy sort of escape button from doing the cognitively heavy work of, maintaining that focus and attention. And how unwilling we seem to be to completely shut off all of those distractions and dive into our work and kind of sit with it in silence and quiet until the words start to come, until we start to have, movement. And particularly, like for me, when I got to the end of the first third of my new book, and that's usually when like the doubts start to come in for me, where I'm like, what am I writing? Oh my God, is this even okay? Like, is this going to fly? Is this too like off the wall? And, you start to have all these kind of doubts, like this is terrible. And like, oh my gosh, do I even have a whole book here? And, all these kind of, so I think that that's when me personally, I'm most susceptible to kind of allowing myself to get drawn into these things that are going to sort of alleviate the pain that deep focus can be when you're, just kind of on the periphery of flow state, which, I love being in flow state. Most authors do, but they'll also tell you how difficult it can be at times to get yourself into flow state. And then when you're also having doubts or questions or, either about your ability or the particular project you're working on or whatever, how just enticing it is, to allow these distractions to come and pull you from the hard work of getting into flow or getting into that deep work state, So I think if anything, this was just kind of it was a wake up call for me, like I could just really see how, because of my own, just how I had allowed external factors, like by accepting the job that I didn't want, kind of thing, saying yes to that. And so it was this additional external variable that required, my time, but also required, thinking and cognitive processing and was taking up space in my brain. I'd allowed that in, and I didn't know how to say no to it, or I didn't know how to walk away with it, walk away from it, which was making me feel guilty and all these other things. And the turning 50, which was not, it was not so much the aging thing, which I think I wasn't on the lookout for that, but it was really more that reflective of like, it was a time thing, like you you have a limited amount of time left in your life. How do you want to spend it? What do you want to spend it doing? What is meaningful to you? Is writing books meaningful to me anymore? So that threw me for a loop. And so then I was looking for these escapes. I was letting them in, even though, like, who doesn't know if you get far enough along in your writing career that, like, if you want to write a book, you basically like leave your phone in the other room or turn it off, and basically shut down any and all notifications from your computer that it's going to be coming in. And yet, when you're kind of trying to escape uncomfortable thoughts and feelings, I think you're more likely to turn those things on and allow yourself to be pulled in all those other directions because it's an easy escape. It's easy to kind of escape into those things rather than sitting down and doing the hard work of getting back into flow, moving forward with your story, and immersing yourself in your characters and in your worlds, kind of thing. So all of that is to say, I feel like I've made some big shifts. I have, you know, kind of restructured my thinking. Um, I'm not sure if I'm going to do such a hardcore plan for the second quarter with regards to, I'm absolutely going to get the first draft of this book completed. And the reason why is because of that question about, spending time and how do you want to spend your life and this kind of thing. Whereas, yes, I still want to write books and I want to finish this book. Um, and I'm excited about that. I don't think I want to work on it under that degree of intensity and pressure that I did through January. And I kind of think, my resistance to it is also part of the messaging that, working in that way, at least right now, is not really in alignment with where I am and the kind of life I want to live. And I'm just going to kind of go with that. Like, I don't want to throw it away. I don't want to, just walk away from, writing or working on this book. That's not the right answer for me right now. But I do think the right answer is to not be stressing about daily word count and, getting something done, and I kind of wonder, like, why was I even putting that pressure on myself in the first place? Because, that's one of the lovely things about being an indie author is, I'm in control of that. And so then why was I just all of a sudden putting the same like stress and pressures on myself that I felt when I was with a traditional publisher, with regards to getting stuff accomplished in that way? Now, I'll say the flip side of that is I don't also want to just give myself a complete full pass and say, oh, whenever, like, because whenever is not going to work for me either. Like, whenever might as well be never. So I think what I want to do is just sort of shift my thinking, shift my focus to, yes, I'm working on this book. Yes, I would like to try to write 5 days a week. But if on some of those days I write 100 words and some of those days I write 1,700 words, any and all of that is okay. That the purpose and point is for me to stay engaged with the story enough so that I'm always aware of where I am and what's happening in the story. Because I've talked about this in videos before. Where I am right now is because it's been such a long time where I've been kind of disengaged from it. I'm now having to go back and read through everything I've written up until this point so that I can kind of get back in the headspace. Okay, where am I? What's going on? Where are we? And how are we moving into the next act, essentially. And so, to me, really the only important thing is to stay engaged with it enough so that I can, when I sit down to write, I'm not having to kind of backtrack and go like, wait, who is this character and when were they in here before, and that kind of thing. And so, but other than that, like, I think it's just about like hanging on to the joy of the process and the creative process and releasing all those kind of hamster wheel expectations about like, you know, completion date or, trying to do more of it than I've ever done before, kind of thing. Because I sort of think like if I release that pressure from me, I am actually going to get this book done quicker than I have ever written before because I do have more time to do it. As long as I stay very on guard about these like opportunities coming my way that are, essentially, you know, they're sucking my time, they're sucking my headspace, they're sucking my energy, they're requiring of me. And, now I'm aware they can come in a multitude of different forms, right? So, I think I went out with my girlfriend like probably was it a week ago and we were sitting there chatting about this and I said here's the new thing, for me is that whenever somebody asks of me something like, hey, hey, do you want to do this? Like, I have this job, or you'd be great for this, or, whatever. Um, that my new rule for myself is that I tell them, hey, I'll get back unless I'm able to say no right away. Like I just know this is absolutely not, and I say no right away. If there's a sneaky part of me that's like going, oh, that would be kind of cool, or that would be good, or that's great money, or any of the kind of things that entice you into saying yes to things that, are not really in alignment with what you want to be doing. Um, my new go-to answer is, you know what? Can I get back to you about this on this day? And the day is 72 hours from when they've asked me. Because I sort of figure like, that comes from, my life before about, when, you have like 72-hour holding periods, and it's usually when people are in crisis or, they are, just kind of behaviorally or emotionally or, psychologically in a crisis place. This idea of like these 72-hour holds. And it's like sometimes like time is the intervention that you need. And you need that time to assess the situation and figure out what's going on. And, what are your next steps going to be? All of those kind of things. You're not making knee-jerk reactions right in that moment when that individual is at the height of crisis, right? And so that's my new thing. Whereas like anytime sort of anything external comes my way and I start to get that like feeling of like, wait a second, if I, for whatever reason, feel I'm unable, whether it's guilt or obligation or any of these things to say no right then, my new answer is like, if it's a Monday, I'm like, hey, you know what? I'm going to get back to you on Thursday about that, because that time frame is going to give me, sort of the luxury of being able to put a pin in it and stop and think about it and really kind of be able to have that processing time to sort of determine of whether or not like, actually, yes, this is a great opportunity. I am going to move into this fully aware that it's going to require, these things of me, or, it's going to allow me to fully articulate why this is not right for me, and to let it go and say, hey, thanks, but that's not right for me right now, kind of thing. So anyway, 50 and still learning, still learning life lessons, and, things can still come and, basically hijack you from your path that you've put yourself on, whatnot. And I guess, that's what makes this a whole journey, right? I'm definitely not a fully self-actualized person yet. And so, still have things to learn and things to figure out. But I guess that's pretty much all I have for today. I'm just kind of, giving the update of where we are. I'm definitely, back at work on the new book. I don't know what this means for, doing any more of my 12-week planning, because I feel like right now that's just not in alignment with where I am and how I'm going to be sort of moving forward. I think I prefer more of these, this content that's more about like just the organic aspect of the process rather than trying to force, myself or encourage others to sort of force themselves into this productivity schedule that, is maybe not sustainable for everybody. I think it works for some people and their particular personality type, but I just think I'm maybe realizing like this is not maybe a good path for me. Because once I kind of fall off the productivity wagon, I flounder a little bit and I'm not really, sure what to do because, right, I'm failing at the 12-week year, and that's all I can kind of think about. Whereas I think it's a very valuable system. But I think like most systems that I find or like most books that I read, it's like I find what is the takeaway that works for me with my life and how I operate, and what is the stuff I'll kind of leave on the table. That's maybe that's a message for somebody else, but it's not really aligning with me. So anyway, this video is already very, very long. I want to thank you if you've made it this far. Thank you for watching the whole thing. I think most of my content moving forward is going to be this sort of chatty writer's life. What are some of, what's going well? What are some of the challenges? And just really kind of focusing on that, like that, that writer life content for other writers and I guess readers who are curious about the madness that is the behind the scenes. You hold the books in your hand, but maybe, it's like, oh my gosh, not realizing how authors really just kind of put themselves through it, trying to produce these things that, a lot of people will read in less than 24 hours. So it still kind of stuns me sometimes that, we spend months, sometimes years writing a book and somebody will blow through it. Frequently in my books, people say, oh my gosh, I read it in less than a day because I do write fast-paced commercial fiction. And I think in a way, the way I structure it, it tends to be very engaging and, people don't tend to put them down. But that means they blow through them really quickly. And so I'm always just kind of like, well, I'm glad you read it in 24 hours. It took me 18 months, to sort of get it out there. But that's the nature of the beast, right? Exactly. So anyway, thank you for being here. If you're not a subscriber, I hope that you will consider subscribing to my channel. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. That helps the algorithms and helps other people find my channel as well. If you have any questions for me that you'd like me to answer, please put them in the comments below. I love reading through comments. And if there is a question that I think I could answer in video format, hey, I'm going to make that video for you and for anybody else who's curious about that answer. So again, thank you for being here and have a great day.